into the area.
Verify cameras are on.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
There's something about Yamaha's YFZ450R that we never really connected with, and it's hard to place a finger on exactly why. The Viking prefers to race red with his two TRX 450R builds, Flying Brian is amassing quite the Suzuki collection as of late, and I've personally been perfectly content on the Raptor 700 and whatever else happens to be making its way through the shop at a given time. We wanted to put our finger on exactly what it was that we were missing, because after all, the YFZ450R is the only 450 race class sport quad to survive the quadpocalypse of the late 2000s and early 2010s. It's earned more GNCC wins and championships than any other modern era machine, and that's with it being more motocross bias out of the box with its 48.8 inch width. So we went ahead and bought one, with full intentions of putting it head to head with some of our favorites like the LTR 450 and maybe even the Viking's kitchen sink race builds. But those videos are for another day. Today's video is all about the YFZ 450, what we were missing, and why we're labeling it the fighter jet of ATVs. ATV thefts are on the rise, and the best way to protect your new investment is with a Monomoto 7 GPS tracking unit. The small, weatherproof, shockproof GPS unit fits discreetly on your ATV without needing to connect to the battery, which makes it harder for criminals to locate and easy to install. The GPS unit arms automatically and calls you within a minute of detecting suspicious movement, so you can alert authorities immediately and recover your machine. For more information, visit monomoto.com. We started our day thinking about finding the flaws with the YFZ450, especially after Yamaha held a media event for the YFZ450 and Raptor 700 this year, which means there's plenty of fluff pieces on these quads floating around YouTube right now from guys who typically review trucks or focus on online retail. But if that coverage reminds folks outside of the ATV circles about how cool sport ATVs are, I'm down with it 100%. As far as flaws go, we really only have one major complaint, and that's with the power delivery. The 449cc liquid-cooled dual overhead cam engine with 5 titanium valves is fairly high compression at 11.8 to 1, which means it needs the RPMs to be high to be in the power. But our complaint is probably much more to do with fuel delivery, and is a product of government regulation as opposed to any design flaw.
On the hike. All right, what are your initial thoughts? That's really the first ripping you've done on this.
Yeah, it's pretty much brand new. I haven't ridden it much, just around the hay field at the house. Out here in the woods and the trails, I mean, it's kind of got a bog on the low end.
Yeah.
Whenever you punch it at, you know, off idle, and if you get into some tight stuff where you have to idle the bike down and then you want to throttle out of something real quick, it's got a hesitation to it. It's kind of got a bog.
Yeah.
But then once you get past that and get the RPMs built up, of course that goes away, and that's where the power comes on, is kind of from that mid to high range, versus in the low end it doesn't have much low end grunt. It's all
makes it harder as a trail machine just by virtue of not wanting to lug real low.
Right.
And I heard you stall it once, which is not common. It's not common for you, but that's kind of a condition of that lug, I would imagine.
Right. I let the RPMs get down too low, and then whenever I punched it to come out of a corner, it just died on me. So it's you know, they say these things are really restricted from the factory with the stock exhaust and the for emissions and stuff for the stock ECU, and I think that's where it's coming from. I think once you do like a programmer and an exhaust or something and a little bit to the intake, I think that would clear that up. But
right, it's not an issue with the motors being bad or whatever it is. Yamaha has had to adjust to keep these things on the market with those emission standards,
to meet emission standards.
So That's really the end result, is that little bit of Yama bog that you're going to hear about when you're around these machines long enough.
Once you figure out the nuances of its power characteristics, it becomes a lot more fun. And we'd imagine giving it proper fuel, letting it breathe, and adding a pipe is really going to uncork the potential of the racy engine. While figuring out the power delivery, we came across another major strength of the YFZ, and that's the assist and slipper clutch that reduces clutch lever effort. While clutch effort may not be an issue for the average trail rider, racers will definitely appreciate getting less fatigued while banging through gears. The clutch also reduces engine braking, which helps you stay in the power while downshifting through turns, and really contributes to the fun factor of the YFZ. Throttle effort is really light for a stock machine too, so both arms are at an advantage on the YFZ.
The revs seem like less of an issue once you get the hang of it.
Yeah, once you get used to it, once you kind of get in a groove, the low end bog kind of, you don't notice it as much once you kind of get used to it and familiar with it, but it seems to be pretty quick through these little tight sections. And then those jumps, I mean, it's just flying beautiful over top of them little jumps and stuff.
Yeah,
feels fast, feels kind of agile.
Everything about this machine is meant for it to take flight. The rider space and the bodywork provides a ton of room for body English, and the T-shaped seat that's super narrow towards the front allows you to move with ease. The handlebars even have 4-way clamps for plenty of variety in getting the quad set up so it's comfortable for you. The weight, feel, and balance of the machine is so spot on that it almost feels self-leveling in the air, and the low center of gravity just begs you to fling this machine into corners.
With the narrow midsection of the seat right here, and then where it kind of tees off back here at the back, and then the fenders droop down, it gives you the cockpit gives you a lot of room to move around. A
lot of maneuverability.
Whenever you're riding or racing, you can really get off to the side, you could really scoot up and back. It just gives you a big range of motion to move around on the quad while it's underneath of you.
That's a very, very narrow seat, especially up at the tank. So lots of room for some body English, for sure. So we're finding more things we like about this machine than the negatives. I know we had geared this towards some of the stuff that the guys that are reviewing this year aren't telling you, but you know, with the ergos, what we were sitting on it earlier, and we're like, man, the seat height feels really, really tall. One thing I really like is how wide these foot pegs are. For stock foot pegs, they grip pretty good. I really like how wide they are. But go ahead and hop back on it. Your knees are up high for sure, and the seat height feels a lot taller than I guess we'd expect from our experience with some of the other sport quads. You know, the LTR 450 doesn't feel like it's up this high.
And when you're kind of in the attack position here, you know, you're up on the tank is narrow, so your knees and stuff can go straight forward. They're not spread out. Your knees feel good and comfortable, and then it puts you at a good position to where you can get up off the quad and you can move around really well.
So a lot of folks are going to upgrade their tires right away, but you've been noticing
the
back tires are not bad.
The stock Maxxis tires are hooking up well. They break loose in a corner. You can get it to slide. It's not so planted that it wants to tip and roll in the corners. It's kind of predictable. It'll slide, and then they hook up well as well. You know, they seem to have good forward traction and break loose.
Yeah, some guys replace the wheels and tires as like a first mod. I'm a fan of running the stock tires down until you need them. They don't last forever, that's for sure. They don't last a long time, but they're pretty good.
I think these are doing well, and the front tires seem to hook good. And as far as turning and maneuverability,
We liked the tires for trail riding, partly because they're taller than what you would expect for a bike that's set up more for a motocross track out of the box at 21 inches front and 20 rear. In the dry hard pack that we were on, the tires were perfect with just the right amount of hookup. Tires are something most racers are going to change anyway, so the tire choice by Yamaha is a nice balance for a dual-purpose race bike. The front KYB shocks are excellent out of the box, especially in regard to anti-bottoming. We didn't make any suspension adjustments to the factory settings and still never experienced any bottoming. We ran one of the Viking's race builds with custom axis suspension in the same areas on test day, and Yamaha's factory KYBs held their own in comparison to a high-end aftermarket setup, especially in bottoming resistance. Although bump absorption and chatter weren't quite as good as a $2,000 upgrade, with plenty of adjustment opportunity, we think we could get a lot of performance out of the factory shocks.
So overall, I think you're a little bit more impressed with this than you had anticipated being.
Yeah.
Like you said, when we started out, you said you'd only driven it around the house
Right.
a little bit, and you know, we talked about it before, and you're kind of like, I don't know, you know, but you're comparing it to your built quads.
Built quads, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, you know.
It needs some stuff to make it right.
Right.
But overall,
yeah, I like the way it handles. I'm really starting to like that, is that the way it handles in the woods. The Hondas do well, especially after, you know, everything's built, but I think the YFZ is going to be, with some modifications, I think it'll be a really good woods bike.
When Yamaha actually had some competition on the market, they used to do promo videos of how the YFZ450R stacked up against the competition. Yamaha deserves all the credit for outliving everyone else and keeping the pure sport ATV market alive, and they certainly have more than their fair share of championships to speak to their credibility. But just for fun, and for the nostalgia of the heyday of pure sport machines, we plan on running the YFZ450R against some of our fleet, especially against the machine that should have provided the biggest rivalry to the YFZ in its out-of-the-box package, Suzuki's LTR 450. Make sure to stick around so you don't miss it. Thanks for checking out the video, guys. We'll see you next time right here on Dirt Obsession.